have spent 30 years of my life in the Eastern Upper Peninsula on a farm, partly as a child and then running it with my husband as an adult. But we did retire in 2019, and I live in Lansing now. Cool. So it's been, it's actually, we're seeing where it's really quite advantageous for our Northern Michigan Advocacy organization to have someone in Lansing. And this particular project was really the first where we really took full advantage of that. So one of the things, once we got to the bottom of what was going on and saw the need and realized there wasn't really anybody else around the state talking about the fact that this Michigan high-speed internet office existed, but that this request for funding was sitting there not being acted on, which meant it was just a shell of an office. The other thing that was interesting to me as I learned more about it is that so the Center for Change signed on last May to support a project in the Eastern Upper Peninsula, which they're creating the EUP Connect Collaborative. And the work is being spearheaded by the Eastern Upper Peninsula Intermediate School District. And the technology director there, Jason Kronemeyer, had come to be my expert in the region there in the time that I lived in the Eastern Upper Peninsula when it came to what are we doing about improving internet. He was involved in the early 90s when they ran fiber optic between the libraries and the schools in that region and made it provided an opportunity at the time to like have a Spanish teacher in one school and be able to have students sit in a classroom in another school and be able to like take that class with them at the time. But anyway, we signed on to support that project of them creating a collaborative. And the idea is they're bringing together all the municipalities and all the key infrastructure pieces like your hospitals and your libraries, all of the tribes that are in the region to all work together to get every 911 address affordable, reliable, and secure high-speed internet. So I found out from talking with Jason, I mean, first off, he was saying to me, like, what's happening with that Michigan high-speed internet office? Like, I should be getting weekly emails from them by now. Important information that I like need to do the work. And I said, okay, that's interesting. And then once we worked on it farther down the road, he shared with me that he had actually been on like a task force back in 2018 under the Snyder administration. And he would come from the UP down to meetings in the executive office and work with other key partners from across the state. And they created the Michigan Broadband Roadmap that was released in 2018 that called for that central office. You know, the need to have one place in Michigan where whether you're a user just looking to understand better what services are available to you, or if you're an internet service provider or a builder looking to connect into what's happening in Michigan and, putting pieces of a puzzle together, you'd have one key place to enter. I've learned since that was actually called for in 2016. I don't have it at my fingertips what the name of the plan was that was a part of. But then that became very interesting to me because this was no longer the Democrat in power saying, I've created this office. This was under Governor Snyder's, regime that this was called for, and it hasn't been acted on yet. And all it's doing by waiting was setting us farther and farther behind as our neighboring states were setting up their offices. And I don't remember the numbers, but Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, all have offices established with somewhere between 6 and 12 employees already working. What happens when you go out to the talent pool? You have less people to potentially apply for your positions and run your state department, right? And as the more we continue to put things off, I mean, whether it's the actual fiber optic line or the technicians we need or whatever, they're going to become more and more scarcer. I mean, you can't rain money for broadband all across this country and not think that there's going to be a shortage of resources as we try to kick all this off, right? So, well, I think the thing that's really interesting, if we pull up and look at the various maps, is it isn't just a UP problem. It's not just a Northern Michigan problem. It's just outside of Battle Creek. Yep. So we've got a team member with the MI Rural Advocates who lives just 10 miles out of Jackson and moved here from Washington, D.C. just 4 years ago, had no idea that he needed to ask, what's the internet like? Because he came from an environment where everybody had great internet. So it's been shocking to him that a common question in Michigan is, where are you getting your internet? He's like, that's just not a conversation that we had. So he actually has internet just outside of Jackson that's coming out of Muskegon, which seems crazy. So, I mean, like within your service area, there's lots of pockets that don't have great internet. And then the other question is, what is great internet? So a lot of the funding that's been rolled out in the past required upload speed of 10 megabits. Recently, so the funding that's coming to the states through the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act has moved the needle. So 25.3 is now considered unserved. So that's why, why Michigan is investing in redoing their maps, because we need to be prepared to challenge the FCC maps in terms of they're based on census blocks. And we know that the, more rural areas you get into, those census blocks become bigger and bigger. So you could have one resident that has internet, but that really doesn't mean that the whole census block has, any particular speed of internet. The thing that's been interesting is no one disagrees that we have folks that need better internet in the state. I think where we're seeing the push-pull is with people wanting to make some assumptions because the state is going to have this point of contact, that I see assumptions being made that this might be publicly owned infrastructure. And I've not really seen that indication at all. I think where we've seen, there are certainly some people that are proponents of publicly owned infrastructure, but I also see that a lot of these projects were kicked off because a community saw that their citizens needed better internet and no private company was making the investment. So they put together a plan to make it happen themselves. What I see happening through the high-speed internet offices, they're going to be a pass-through. So for just the federal infrastructure dollars alone, we're looking at 1.3 to 1.5 billion with a B coming from the federal government that will pass through that office. And then they'll be using 5% of those dollars as is allowed in the federal legislation to fund this office. So it didn't even take any general fund dollars to fund the office. And so that's going to provide us with a chief connectivity officer, an ombudsman that internet service providers and builders would be able to be in contact with, subject matter experts, as well as administration and compliancy officers. Because of course, the federal government's money is going to come with compliancy requirements. And they're actually starting to tighten those requirements so that we can eliminate some of the issues that have happened in the past in terms of like overbuilding where buildings already happened. So the key focus of much of these monies that are coming is on unserved areas is the top priority. And that unserved category has been moved up to be anybody that doesn't have a minimum of 25.3 for a speed. Yeah, so the Center for Change was formed in 2019, and we were formed around 7 issues that were of great concern to our members. And one of those from the beginning was connectivity. But as we followed along, what's happening, in Michigan with connectivity and who's doing what, there's always 2 things that were apparent. There's a lot of work being done, but they're not all working together. Hence why we're so excited to get the central office up and operating. And the other piece was that there's not enough money. There's never enough money for the project. And that all changed when the FCC and the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund Awards came out in December of 2020. So Michigan received per capita the largest amount of money in this country from the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, or RDOF awards. And that is a middle mile backbone investment in broadband. And so there's a lot of that, especially across the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.